So we need you to use your old school virtual reality skills and imagine there's a fire right here for our Fireside Chat. Thanks a lot. So it's great to be with you all here this morning. Thanks, Roman. Thanks, Stan. Let me just set the context a little bit for this conversation before diving right into the sets of questions. And so, as we've already heard over the last several days, there's a lot of changes happening in our industry, and those changes are affecting really every aspect of the ecosystem, ranging from the service providers to the vendors to the enterprises and the development communities. It really feels like all aspects of our businesses is being challenged really every day. How we engage customers, how we innovate and create new products, how we bring those products to market, price them and consume them. And so our goal for this session, when we put it together, was really just to provide some incremental insights and perspectives about where we're at, where we're going, and how we might get there. Okay? With that, we'll jump right into the first question. So, Roman, there's some major trends happening right now in the information and communication technology market and in our space here.
Yeah.
Can you share with us what is top of mind for you and for AT&T?
Sure, Tim, and thank you. But before I start, I got to say something. It's the first time at the MEF conference, and I got to say this conference is quite valuable for all of us. You know, our industry is going through a lot of transformation, a lot of innovation. You've heard about it throughout the conference. And I think it's more important than ever that we come together and we look at ways to be more efficient as an industry. And that's kind of where MEF comes in, where our infrastructure is really creating a whole transformational wave across all the customers that we serve around the world. And we need to align to make our infrastructure dynamic, et cetera. Anyway, well done. I just want to applaud the MEF team for getting all of us together. Very critical in general. To your point, Tim, there are a lot of mega technology trends that are really impacting our industry and our customers' businesses. I think we all know them. It's IoT and cloud and edge compute and AI, et cetera. Right? But there are three that I've been focusing on over the past year that I think are going to just dramatically accelerate digital transformations of our customers, of our business, and are going to be very, very disruptive. The first last speaker talked a bit about just 5G. I think 5G is going to be an absolute game changer. It's going to be a game changer for business especially, but also the consumer side of customers that we serve. And the reason is because 5G is just not another upgrade, right? It's a transformation of the entire cellular network. And it does allow us to deliver different kinds of experiences, right? Experiences that are rooted in low latency, as an example. Low latency becomes critical, especially as we connect devices that are generating more content than consuming more content, right? I'll give you an example. The way your brain works, it takes about 20 milliseconds for you to see something, analyze it, and react to it. And that's relevant because if you have a augmented reality application or virtual reality application, if your application, including the network latency and the processing, is more than 20 milliseconds, especially significantly higher than 20 milliseconds, what happens is you get dizzy, you get nauseous, et cetera. So, 5G is going to change the game. It's going to enable us to connect all sorts of things, thousands and thousands of things. The density comment up front is really critical. With 4G, the density of what you could connect within a square kilometer is about 8,000 devices. Under 5G, the density increases to over 1 million, according to the ITU. So density becomes more important. Latency is going to enable all sorts of new applications. And of course, speed. You hear a lot about speed. Speeds will increase between 10x to 1,000x, depending upon what the spectrum is that you're using. From an AT&T perspective, we've been on a 5G transformation journey for a while. As a matter of fact, last week we had a successful browsing call with a 5G device on a live 5G network that's first in the industry. We're continuing to deploy infrastructure. We're committed to deploy 5G, mobile 5G in 12 markets, in partial 12 markets in the United States. And we've committed to 7 more at the beginning of next year. So 5G, very transformational, really excited about it. A lot of our customers are excited about it. Now, it also has an implication on computing, right? And I really fundamentally believe that the whole computing model is going to shift. Of the last 10 years, it's all about, centralized computing and light wave applications on devices and browsers, as an example, pulling information from, from a centralized cloud. But when the devices that are attached to the network end up consuming less data and producing more data, and those devices need to talk to one another, compute and where to compute changes. It needs to be really pulled forward, closer in to the customer, et cetera, has significant implications on applications, et cetera. Really critical for very specific industries, manufacturing being one of them, where a lot of the low latency applications are required. And the third, mega trend, I would say, is one that we've been talking about at length, and that's, SD-WAN. And the way I kind of think about SD-WAN is it's really an ability to make the network more intelligent. It's making the application more visible to the network and allowing the network to route flows instead of packets, right? What are existing networks doing? They're taking a packet and they're saying, take it from this point and route it to another point. When you move to SD-WAN, it's about routing flows. You need to understand the applications. Tremendous amount of value to the customer as networks become even more sophisticated to be able to say, this flow is really critical, routed with low latency in this manner. This flow requires special security treatments, so routed in this way. Anyway, a lot of trends out there, 3 top of mind that I think are going to be very transformative over the next couple of years. Tim.
Okay. 5G, distributed compute, and SD-WAN were the 3 that you listed. Okay.
3 of my favorites.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm going to come back to a couple of those in just a second. I wanted to just pivot slightly into, you're talking to a lot of customers. You're out there on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And so, they have their own journey they're going through as well. What are you hearing from your customers when you engage with them and talk to them about their own digital transformation journey?
Yeah, so what I would say is, first of all, we have over 3.5 million business customers, right? Across every industry, across the globe. And the conversations that we have with them around their digital transformation are very unique, right? But yet at the same time, they're very similar from the perspective that it's about taking technology and figuring out how to disrupt kind of status quo. So, for some customers, it may be about integrating, the brick and mortar stores with back-end systems. In other places, it may be connecting anything and everything and making things talk to one another. As an example, for connected cities, it may be a traffic light talking to a traffic sensor and vice versa, or drones interacting with one another, or a connected pallet in the manufacturing floor, interacting, ensuring that it knows where all the workers are, et cetera. So the discussions that we have are very unique. And what I'll say is, when customers think about their digital transformations, they're thinking about it very broadly. They're thinking about, how do I sell? How do I serve my customers? And I think most importantly, they're really thinking about, what is the market that I'm really in? They're kind of expanding the scope of how they define their market, and they're trying to leverage technology to disrupt. And I think as an industry, that is really critical for us to be able to come in and have conversations with our customers that are not technology specific, but outcome-based.
Right.
Being able to translate the technology that we provide in a way that enables a customer to say, I understand how I could take this solution and become more competitive, disrupt my industry, generate more revenue, serve my customers better.
Right. Excellent generality about the digital transformation for the customers. Do you have a couple of maybe success stories
Sure.
or some specifics you might share with us?
Yeah,
from a
sure,
success
sure.
or two?
You know, I'll give you some examples that I could talk about. About a month ago, we announced a relationship with Samsung Semiconductor. You know, they're a tremendously forward-thinking company, have a huge manufacturing location in Austin, Texas. And we've created a innovation zone around 5G to help bring Samsung to the next level of the connected factory model. You know, think about this type of a company where they have a factory, 4 million square feet of factory floor, already quite automated, thousands of employees basically helping to manufacture the chips that go into all sorts of electronics, you know, phones, computers, et cetera. And what we're working with them on is the ability to leverage 5G in a test environment to see how you could apply it under their kind of industry 4.0 definition, which means, you know, it might be about, you know, using an 8K camera or 4K camera to inspect the chips as they're going down the assembly line for defects, or it might be connecting a vibration sensor and interconnecting it to a robotic arm, or maybe augmented reality, you know, glasses used for training or for helping a technician be able to diagnose and solve a problem. So Samsung's one example. Another example I'll highlight is a great customer of ours, Caterpillar. We, about 2 months ago, announced a relationship with them where we're interconnecting all of their heavy machines, equipment, and all of their engines, et cetera. 155 countries, so wherever the you know, device is shipped, the gear is shipped, it's always connected. The providers and dealers in that country can provide all sorts of incremental services, proactive maintenance, the ability to have an operator download a work plan. So let's say an operator is digging a 20-foot ditch. They have the ability to download a work plan that allows them to coordinate the pace of excavation with the arrival of the trucks that will take the material away. You know, it's actually very costly for an operator to dig a hole and then put the dirt on the side. Right. And so you get all these kind of secondary benefits of transforming a business to a digital business model. It's just another great example of that.
Chicago is home to the Digital Manufacturing Institute, where I live, Chicago. And so, you know, hearing about, I've been hearing a lot about digital manufacturing lately. It's a great application, logistics, agriculture, with the machining and the mining and the rest. Those are great, you know, things that you might even not just initially think about how we can really change the way those businesses operate and the rest.
Exactly.
So thanks for that. I think I want to go back to MEC, or multi-access edge computing, for just a minute here.
Sure.
And because you touched on that at the opening comment. And you know, there's work happening with the open source with Akrano, and there's Etsy, you know, forming the MEC group and the rest. How do you see MEC really come into AT&T's journey and digital transformation journey, and how do you see that kind of happening, and what can we do next, kind of with multi-access edge computing?
Yeah, I think you know, multi-access edge compute is one of the hottest topics that we are having with a lot of our customers, manufacturing being one. It's a great use case for 5G. And why is it attractive to customers? First of all, a lot of, let's say manufacturing, but it's across many industries, the challenge is to connect everything and anything, so first of all, density. If you have a manufacturing floor and you've connected it with fiber, it's actually extremely costly to retrofit the factory for the next run, right? To pull fiber into a few hundred devices is maybe doable. To pull fiber to thousands of devices is not realistic, especially if you need to modify that. Right. So what our customers are looking for is a solution that enables them to connect anything and everything on the floor, number one. And they're looking for a cellular umbrella. The reason why cellular umbrella works is because performance is much better than Wi-Fi. Under Wi-Fi, under load, you get a lot of fluctuations in performance. So that's one issue. A lot of our customers are looking to keep the data local. So they want the benefits in the cellular infrastructure, but they want to siphon off certain applications for a couple of reasons. One is for security. They don't, quite frankly, trust data leaving their premise. But number two is for really low latency applications. So if you're controlling a robotic arm, you need latencies of less than 5 milliseconds. And that means those applications most likely need to be right there on the premise. So what does AVC do? Multi-access edge compute really solves multiple problems. It's a hybrid cellular, private, public type of an arrangement where you get the benefit of the cellular technology and the macro network. You could connect standard devices, initially 4G, then 5G, and you could choose what applications and which devices or which APNs are routed locally for local treatment and which ones go back to the network. You still have the ability to provide macro level services. The devices work when you walk out of the location, but when you're in a location, and you want to basically siphon off some of that data, that can occur. And that's really the key thing that a lot of customers are looking for. Great performance, the ability to control where the applications occur for low latency, the security, ability to provide the density that is required, tremendous amount of interest across our client base, across many industries, actually.
It seems like video at the edge becomes one of those early obvious, I'm not say obvious, but right. cases because it's bandwidth intensive, and also because I don't want to send it all back there and I need some real-time kind of intelligence about what that video stream is seeing or identification.
Exactly. If you're actually got that 8K camera focus on that line and you're actually micro-focused on inspecting the circuitry to look for defects, right. You want to react to that really quickly. You don't want to go back right. 500 miles to a centralized cloud right. someplace with 150 millisecond delay, because by that time, that chip is all the way down there. Yep. Or if you have another great use case is a autonomous pallet, and you got workers walking around, you got autonomous pallets walking around. You want to make sure that when that human is in the path of the pallet, that the reaction is instantaneous, as an example. And right. so tremendous amount of use cases, and not only in the manufacturing industry, we're seeing a lot of use cases in actually retail, believe it or not, and in transportation and logistics, et cetera.
Awesome. With that, let's shift back to AT&T and its journey for a minute. We began this whole SDN and NFV journey some 5 years ago. Can you talk a little bit about your own experience here at AT&T and give us a little bit of an update of kind of where you feel like you are from an SDN and
Sure.
NFV perspective?
So, Tim, like you said, it's been a long journey already. Hard to believe it's that many years, but it has. The trigger for us to actually dramatically change the model, the architecture of our network, and move to this software-centric, virtualized approach was just the growth that we were seeing on our network, right? So if you look at the growth on our network since 2007, it's 360,000%. So 360,000% data growth on the network, driven by all sorts of new and critical applications. And we knew we had a problem. We knew that we needed to change the architecture so that we could scale the network better, get greater efficiency, so that we could start to deliver services that are much more dynamic. And that model turned out to be a software-centric model, a web-scale model, where basically network becomes a distributed computing environment and the virtualized network functions are sitting on top of that. We're well along that journey. The target is to be 75% virtualized for critical network functions by 2020. We're well on track to get there at that point. The benefits have been, I think, tremendous. The benefits have been from perspective of just lower costs, greater flexibility, the ability to deliver dynamic services to customers. It turned out that the software-centric network is very critical to 5G. 5G, by definition, is a re-architecture towards a software-centric environment. You're really pushing out the core mobile network functionality to the edge. That allows you to provide these low latency types of transactions. So it's just a foundation for that. And so we've continued down this journey. Our customers have benefited from more dynamic services. And then we also pushed this model to the customer premise. Now, over 2 years ago, we rolled out our virtualized platform, Flexware. That platform is the foundation for networking on the customer premise for us, as opposed to deploying multiple appliances. We're pushing software. Customer wants a Juniper router, a Cisco router, Fortinet, Palo firewall, Checkpoint firewall, Juniper, Cisco firewall. It's all just a software push. If they want SD-WAN, it's a software push, and then we service chain the functions together. Customers love that. The reason why, it gives them flexibility. It gives them optionality to make changes. This market is moving so quickly. We all need to be flexible enough to be able to keep up. If you get a new function that could potentially transform network, you want to be able to push that, and the customer wants that ability to push it. Okay. So we've started with the core network. We continue down a journey and expanded it to the customer premise. We're getting a lot of traction with that model. From an SD-WAN perspective, as you probably heard from Josh, again, two approaches: network-centric approach. You're pushing a VNF onto the customer premise, onto the virtualized Flexware platform. You also have a virtualized function in our distributed cloud environment. And then you're creating and routing capabilities over an underlay between that location and the edge of our network. And then the over-the-top model is, as Josh described, basically, again, on our virtualized platform, but you're tunneling all the way through. So a lot of traction in the market. We're quite excited about that.
Awesome. I think we have time for one last question if we keep it brief. I know we're getting close to the end here, but I know we have a lot of vendors in the audience. And so I wanted a question on their behalf here, which is, I'll just set it up here, if you just bear with me. So AT&T worked with Amdocs and others on the development of eComp, which we now know has rolled into ONAP. AT&T also previously purchased Vieta router software from Brocade, which we now know as the Danos operating system, which was also pushed into open source. AT&T also announced the deployment of 60,000 new cell site routers with an open compute-based hardware platform. So if I'm a vendor sitting in the audience today, what should I take away from those decisions? And is there still room for me as a vendor at AT&T?
Absolutely. The way we actually looked at our strategy and the white box strategy and virtualization strategies, that it was going to open up to the broader market sets of innovation and capabilities that we could leverage. And so, we're all about providing, a standard-based approach for our own networking team to deploy, but also for the industry. We want to make sure that the industry is aligned also with where we're going. So as we rolled out a white box strategy, we are publishing the specifications and allowing vendors to bid for that hardware. We're also creating a platform that allows anybody who has the software capability that we could potentially use to compete for those virtualized functions that we deploy. So we kind of viewed it as moving from a proprietary model to much more of an open model. The proprietary model, the challenges are, it takes us a long time to integrate the hardware into our network. It kind of slows down the innovation. And then you're aligned with a few partners. When you move to a much more open platform and you leverage standards, you open up the whole ecosystem for innovation. And I think more vendors could participate in our architectures and the services that we roll out. And that's what we did with the cellular gateway deployment. We did publish the hardware infrastructure so that anybody could bid on it. But that's kind of how we view it. We view it as an opportunity for us to bring more people in and create greater levels of innovation and kind of accelerate the evolution of our network to this new software-centric model.
Awesome. With that, I think we're out of time, and we'll have to leave it there. Give a round of applause for Roman sitting on the hot seat here. Thanks a lot, everybody.